Welcome to the Be Dadly podcast, where we discuss all things dadly, from being an entrepreneur while caring for toddlers to raising screenagers and talking the birds and the bees. We're here to help you traverse the vast and dynamic landscape of fatherhood. Enjoy practical advice, lots of puns, and even a few heart-touching moments.
And the dad jokes are pretty good too.
And now your host, Brandon Jones.
And just like that, we are back, folks. I am Brandon Jones, your host for the Be Dadly podcast. Today, I have a wonderful guest. This is Case Erickson. Case is a coach for men's sobriety. He runs a website called Men Who Shine. He also works with addiction and shame. He's a coach and consultant. He's got a book called Coming Out by Going In. And his background is actually in owning and operating restaurants and in business management. And today he's going to talk to us really about how he shifted into being coaching and just being a father and all kinds of cool things. We're going to get into so much good stuff here. I promise there's plenty of gold here for you. And I look forward to talking. Case, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. Yes, plenty of gold. Let's dig it up. Let's dig it. Let's go.
Yeah, man.
I don't want those little nuggets either. I want the chunks of gold.
They're real powerful stuff.
Bring it. No pressure.
Right. So, well, you know, what's interesting is every time that we start talking about things like fatherhood, we start talking about what it means to be a man. We start talking about our background. We start talking about our shifts. It doesn't, you know, it's like, it's natural, right? Like the things that come up are our wisdom. And so I never have fear that we won't get into something juicy because the things that we're covering, you can't help but get into juicy stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, so this is going to be awesome. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your coaching and consulting real quick, just from the front, so that people can understand like how you got into this like men's work and why this is so important for you. And I'm also coming from the place of I'm sober myself. And so this has been a very big thing for me. It's been a very big shift. And how did you get into it? What called you into coaching for men and sobriety and things like that? Where did that start?
Well, I think, you know, I've always had this entrepreneurial drive. I've always, you know, my father was a Marine. So, you know, I've definitely have that drive DNA in me. So, it's just, you know, I had the restaurants and, okay. So like, kind of like backing up, like my life had consistently been, from the space of trying to prove something, trying to overcome this notion that I wasn't enough, because my belief system was that I wasn't enough. My belief system was that there was something wrong with me. I came from a, you know, very fundamentalist religious background. So, you know, very strict, you know, mentioned the Marine father. You know, my mother also worked for a televangelist. Wow. I don't know if you've heard of Pat Robertson, but so, you know, she worked for, you know, predominant fundamentalist Christian leaders. And, you know, so she was a teacher at my school, my elementary, junior high school. You know, so I went to Liberty University, which is a really conservative Christian evangelical, I'll call it. So I had years and years and years of, from my experience, was indoctrination. Indoctrination. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know words, but I know that I don't know English, math, science, but I know plenty of Bible.
Right.
I'm like, is that a word? So anyway, you know, I had constructed this life, which on the outside felt like, oh, you know, he's successful, you know, had all the houses, had the wife had all the jewels, had the fancy cars, had multiple restaurants, you know, had gone to school for advertising and design, done that a little bit, and then worked in real estate and saved up, and then, you know, opened our first restaurant. And then, you know, it was like, within 5 years, we opened 3 restaurants and had 2 kids, which was intense. And, you know, so we sold those restaurants and, you know, moved from the Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia area down to Austin, Texas. So that was kind of like the last thing that was, okay, this will fix us, right? Or this will fix me. It was always coming from this space of, for me, like, I need to do something. I need to prove my worth. I need to create something. I need to buy something. I need all these things, So, in the background, kind of developing addictions, and I had a near-death experience, an accidental overdose when I was 34. I'm 40. I'll be 46 this year.
An overdose on, just curious.
Well, I was on antidepressants at the time and was also drinking. And then, so I had Prozac plus wine, plus then I mixed it up with some sort of like tequila drink that I made myself.
Oh, man.
I call it, at the time I called it Daddy's Margarita. It's really good. Really, really good because it is so strong and you don't even know it. And then we had my cousin living with us at the time, and then he was smoking some sort of, he told me it was weed, but it was probably because I went into a catatonic state, passed out. Oh. I could hear everything, right? But I could not, was all I could say. So really, I was floating out of my body, having seizures in the ambulance. It was drama, lots of drama. And that was kind of the catalyst for me that really got me into this space of like, what am I creating? Who am I? When my son was born, that definitely got me a little bit into that space where I was just like, what am I leaving behind? Like, what am I responsible for creating? That's his world. Like I am creating a world for him. We talk about a home, we talk about a bedroom, we talk about all these things for our kids, but it's like the world at large, like where am I? Like what cog of the wheel am I? And really, that was always there for me. And I felt like I was kind of betraying myself a little bit by choosing to expand the restaurant from like 1 to 2 to 3. I felt like it was too much, but at the same time, it was like, this is what we need to do. We need to make more money. The partners need more money, more money. And, it just kind of all snowballed and got super, super stressful. And, long story short, we're able to sell the restaurants, kind of what I thought pushed the reboot button, to come down to Austin. So my kids were 5 and 1 at the time. And, I think that having my son, he's the older one, having him be 5, like I can remember 5, like I can remember my friends in kindergarten. I can remember, the stuff that we were doing after school, the stuff that we were doing in the woods, the uncle's pornography that we went and found, back in, right. In my day, you had to dig for that shit. Like you had to go, but I remember this sense of self that I came in even as young as 5. So, at the time, I think I had been married close to 14 years. And, I'd always had this conversation with my wife before we got married. I used to think I was gay, but I guess I'm not anymore because we're hooking up all the time and things are cool. So maybe I'm bi, or maybe, I don't know, like things work. And, so I was 21 at the time. So, I believed it. She believed it. 2 years in.
And did you want to believe it? Were you like, hey,
totally.
This would be way easier. I'd love for this to work out.
Oh yeah. Because it's like the judgment, like the wrath of God that I was programmed into being afraid of. I was afraid that, I call it invisible sky grandpa at this point. Right. So there's the invisible sky grandpa who's like, no, gays go to hell, and then, so definitely can't be gay for sure. And right. Then if you're going to be, but if you're going to be straight, like everybody's straight, you can only participate in heterosexual activities, but that's after marriage. You have to get married. So if you get married, if you have premarital sex, God's going to get you. Like, so it was always this, like, God's going to get me, even if, no matter what I do. Like, so it's interesting how I carried this belief around spirituality and the spirituality of the universe as, like the father of like, okay, I've got to prove, I've got to do this. I've got, I'm unacceptable as is. Right. And so like coming, doing all these things to do it. And then also knowing that I'm not fulfilling that acceptableness, whatever, if that's a word.
Right.
It's not filling me up. I'm not connected. In fact, I'm disconnected. I'm disconnected from everything. I'm disconnected from myself. I'm disconnected from the universe at large. I'm disconnected from my kids. And all these things. So it kind of all came to a head when they were 5 and 1, and we moved to Austin, and I just started like really feeling like, we talk about the example that we set for our children, and, it's something I deal with every day. I mean, I don't know that a day that doesn't go by that I'm like, I want to live the life that that my son and my daughter I feel are worthy of. And so, seeing how much I value them and how much I love them actually was a catalyst for me to love myself. Like, I did not love myself at all. Certainly did not love myself to the degree that I love my children. And that's something I work on every day still, through conquering these addictions and doing all these things, is like, wow, can I be as obsessed with myself as I am with my kids? And not like in an egotistical way, but just like, wow, like I think they hung the moon and they're so special and they have so many gifts to offer to the world, and their self-expression is so beautiful. And I mean, I could just go on and on and on. So, there's this energy of, if we want to say Invisible Sky Grandpa is actually the nice version, there is this energy, this grandmotherly energy, this loving, this accepting energy that I have brought into my experience through really reconciling my sexuality, reconciling, who I am and what I like and what I enjoy, and bringing the feminine parts of myself and the masculine parts of myself, regardless of orientation. I feel like the larger lesson for so many men is to really embrace all of their authentic self-expression and really transcend these narratives that say, oh, you can't do that, you can't act that way, that's soft, that's weak, that's gay, whatever. Gay is bad, gay is weak, anything associated with women or femininity is supposedly less than. Right. So, we've got a lot of work left to do inside the world of what I feel is authentic masculinity, authentic self-expression, and really, holding the space for us to, be fully ourselves and to be fully free. But that was, when they were 5 and 1, I was like, you know what, honey, like, I don't even know if I'm gay. I'm pretty sure I am, but I don't care. Our relationship was toxic. I had never been with anybody else ever other than her, because I was, a good little Baptist boy. But I just knew that I could not continue to create a life that was showing my son and my daughter, but my son more is, older and stuff, show him that this is what life is. This is life. We're coping. I was overweight. I was drinking. I was not happy in my work. And so, I started, making that, doing those steps to, dissolve what I felt was an inauthentic relationship, an inauthentic marriage. We had a lot of issues, and I tell everybody, I don't have any regrets, but I would also not wish my journey on anyone, because it has been really, really painful and a lot of struggle. So, what I aspire to help people to do is find that alignment with yourself, find that alignment with what really lights you up, and bring that into the world and show up as that, no matter what you do. So I took a lot of detours there in answering your question.
No, it's great. And I mean, so let me kind of summarize what I heard real quick. So you're living this perfect Baptist life. First of all, you're raised in this home by a Marine and a woman that works for an evangelical, like literally superstar.
Yep.
And there's all kinds of pressure there that we can understand. There's all kind of pressure in the Marines that we can understand.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So there's a lot of pressure in here, and they're forming this child, and you are battling with your identity because you can't be who you feel you are. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate?
Well, no.
Was it happening later in your, like, how did it happen exactly?
Well, so you're not incorrect in that. And it's more, they don't believe. So, the previous belief was that, nobody is gay. Everybody is straight. And if you feel anything other than a heterosexuality, then that's your cross to bring to Jesus. That's your thorn in your flesh. That's your access to whatever, so the notion is life is suffering, right? And you identify with Christ through your suffering. You don't really fully get your relief until you die. So it was a very literal interpretation of heaven and hell, as opposed to now. I believe that, Christ said a lot of good, he said a lot of things. You can say, the kingdom of heaven is within. He said that. So what would life look like if that was true?
Right.
If I could really manifest in these beautiful things like the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. So self-control, what used to be like, don't touch yourself, don't have premarital sex, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. When in reality, what I feel it is for me now is self, not others control. It's relinquishing this desire to control others as if we had any, like, I can barely control my damn self.
Right.
But like the illusion that I have any control over anything. I mean, ask any parent, they know that. Like,
100%. Try to make a kid eat broccoli. I don't care how big you are.
There's no control. So like, it's like coming into this space of surrender and trust and all these things. Some very beautiful spiritual truths that I have been able to reframe my religious trauma to really help me on a day-to-day basis. But previous to this, it's been a process.
You kind of felt cursed.
Peeling back the layers of the onion and discovering like, oh, okay, the good news is the onion gets smaller. And so the peeling process doesn't take as long, but it was never, I'm gay and I can't be who I am. It was, I'm straight with a problem. And How do I live with this problem? How do I cope? It was like, how do I cope? How do I survive? It was all about survival. Nothing in me cared to thrive, cared to make a difference in the world. I felt like the world was a cold, cruel place that I was forced to live in against my will. I felt like there was someone that I could be maybe, but I couldn't be. Like there were restrictions placed on me. There were stipulations and judgments and all these other things. And so it was just a deeply ingrained belief system that there was something wrong with me and that the world was a place for me to suffer through. And it wasn't until I started doing some work in the personal development world and, seminars, classes, retreats, coaches, things like that, where I really started to understand the impact of authenticity, the impact of alignment, and really started deconstructing my faith, and got to a space where whoever, this notion of, whoever God was to me at the time, finally accepted me for who I was. And, it was okay to be gay, whatever that meant. And so like, that was the first time I was 35. And so it's like, if it's okay for me to be gay, like, why am I married? So that was the first time I'd actually had that thought.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's like either we think first of all, before I even go there, let me just say what I was going to say real quick, and then I'll come back to that. So I was going to say, some of us believe that God doesn't make mistakes. And if that's the case, then you are not a mistake in whatever you felt or whoever you feel that you are, right? Like you aren't a mistake either. And I'm curious, I guess, to know, have you found, do you still believe in God, or is it like you've exited the entire paradigm, or you felt, I heard a little bit like it sounded like you've actually found a more true God for you than what was initially put on you. Is that accurate?
Oh, for sure. I tell people I found God because I left the church, or I found Christ by leaving Christianity.
Right.
Because I had to really transcend fear. at my core, because it was all a fear-based construction, whether or not I'm talking about the way that I express my sexuality or otherwise, the houses, the cars, the vacations, the businesses, the money, all the things that I was constructing was all from a foundation of fear. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to get it if I don't. I'm gonna, it was, and then like, I better believe this or else, like, I'm going to burn for all eternity. And so it was like, wait, if I really give this up, if I really give up my quote unquote fire insurance, that we called it, I was getting saved at every summer camp, I was like, oh my God, I masturbated too much this week. I need to be saved again.
Repent.
Repent. So I was always like, so much guilt and shame around my sexuality and sexual expression. I mean, all I was doing was like jerking off. Like, there's nothing, the fact that I was literally beating myself up.
Yeah. We know now it's healthy for you. Why would God give you the inclination?
All the things. Right. Yeah. And
I mean, we really also
leaving that was, key for me.
I mean, we also feel inclined to have a margarita, right? But we don't that's not necessarily good for us. So sometimes we do have, and I liked how you said, look, self-control was really about like controlling yourself, not trying to control others. And, I always struggle because I want to say I'm very spiritual, but I'm monotheistic. I believe in one God. Mm-hmm. However, with that said, I also have this belief that God shows up in many forms, in many ways, at many times, right? Yeah. And throughout history, God has been experienced in many ways. And we are constantly trying. We don't have enough words, and we don't have even the brain power to quite put together what God really is. There are things that are outside of what's perceivable to us and what we can get to. Just like, for example, there's a shrimp that can see 16 different colors or whatever it is. It might be way more than that, but there are many more colors and spectrums. Dogs can hear things we can't hear. There are things outside of our perception. And so God too is outside of our perception as much as it is within our perception. And because people have such a dynamic way of seeing the world and using different language and things like that, it makes sense to me that people would experience God, for example, through Hinduism. Mm-hmm. People would experience God through Native American type experiences and in various forms, and that God has a way of, showing up in these different ways. And when I was little, I had this experience where I really scared my friend because he didn't believe in God. And it was very scary to me because I believed that he would go to hell because he didn't believe in God. I grew up non-denominational, but I was baptized. We went to church every Sunday and Wednesday nights and on holidays. And I didn't even trick or treat till I was like 10 years old. It was kind of crazy.
Harvest Festival. You went to the Harvest Festival.
We did. So we did all these things, and it was all trying to avoid the devil, which always was like, we're just always trying to, avoid hell and the devil, and pursue God. But what was interesting to me is that whenever I shared with my friend that he would die and go to hell, when he asked me what hell was, I told him this is like fiery pit. And there's like this big horned devil that will take you there. Yeah. And he was like, just like freaking out. He was just terrified. His parents told me I needed to go home. I had never been even in the slightest bit of trouble. And so I felt really, really, really bad. I was like told that I can't be with my friend. And I remember asking my mom, like, why does God want us to scare people? My mom's like, what, honey? No, God doesn't want you to scare people. And I'm like, well, the stories are really scary. And she's like, oh, okay. And I said, and we're supposed to tell our friends about it. And it scares people. It scared my friend. And she didn't necessarily have a great answer. And I started one of the things she told me is to pray on it. And at the time, and still today, one of the things I've been taught early on that I still love, and I try to teach this to my children, and I try to embody, but is that you can talk to God and you can get an answer back. not just like in the immediate moment. Sometimes it's a sign, sometimes it'll show up later, but you can speak to God and God can hear you. And I grew up with that belief that God can actually hear you. You don't need anyone else to talk to God. You can talk to God. God's here with you. And so I prayed to God and I said, God, why do you want me to scare my friends? And God said, I don't. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, why does the church want to scare my friends? And God says, I don't know. And I said, okay. Awesome. So, this is like my little bitty kid brain trying to put this together. And I was like, wait, there's something amiss here. Like something's not right. God doesn't want me to scare my friends, and the church is doing it. They don't know that God doesn't want us to do this. So then I said, what should I do? And God said, talk to your church or whatever. So I told the church in Sunday Bible school that God doesn't want us to scare our friends, and that he doesn't want us to scare. He wants us to love our friends, and that the church needs to know this. And the study teacher was like, why don't we come out in the hallway? She's like trying to escort me out. She's like trying to talk to me. And she's like, tell me what happened. I'm like, I talked to God. God says he doesn't want us to scare our friends. And he doesn't know why the church is doing this. We have to change these things. Like, this isn't right, Yeah. And they totally were not open to changing, of course.
Right. Yeah.
And I was honestly not up to going anymore because I believed in my pure self that they weren't listening to God, that God was speaking and they were not listening. And at one point, when I was a teenager, I drew a line on a piece of paper and I put on one side, I put fear, anger, lust, jealousy. I put all these things that were really negative emotions on one side. And on the other side, I put like faith, hope, love, trust, all these great positive things. And what I did is I said, okay, on one side you have God, on the other side you have Satan, right? Whatever. So you have this positive and negative experience that we're all kind of dealing with inside. But anytime I'm coming from the position of the left side of this fear, hate, lust, all this stuff like that, then I am serving that side because I am using that energy. And so I was like, it's very clear to me, I need to be on the side of faith, hope, trust, love. That's the side that I need to work on. And if I'm coming from any other position, I'm not serving God. God wants me to serve on this side of the line.
Yeah.
And that really changed that was also something that emboldened my perspective of, hey, God, jealousy is a thing that even men can overcome. Why couldn't God? Let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I like to look at the story, the arc of the central character of the Bible is God, right? And like, where are we in that? One of the verses in, I believe it's Deuteronomy, is like, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." And not there is one God, but that God is one. And, Christ said things like, "Let them be one as you and I are one." And so if you look at these two kind of characters from the Old Testament, you've got this jealous, wrathful, angry, like, I'm going to smite you, and like just crazy, crazy character that I personally can identify with. Like, I get angry, I get jealous, I get envious, absolutely. I lose my shit, but you balance it with this Christ character, which doesn't really resemble this, tyrannical sort of entity. But the journey was like, it was kind of like Christ was saving himself from himself. So I take, I've done a lot of research and reading around, like Florence Scovel Shinn is a good one. Of course, Neville Goddard is a good teacher on this. Richard Rohr is a current one, Franciscan. I don't know if you've heard of the Universal Christ, but kind of taking all these notions and Loving What Is by Byron Katie is another good example of, this world of this illusion of separation, right?
Yes.
Like the notion that maybe we bit into the apple and we bought into this world of good and evil, instead of really like transcending that and realizing everything is one, and we're here, experiencing separate fractals of one energy, one source, one thing. And then how can we, the only sin in my mind right now is when I feel that I'm separate. Because when I feel like I'm separate, to me, that's where a lot of the addictions come up. That's where sadness comes up. That's where depression comes up. All these things, when I feel isolated, when I don't feel connected, when I don't feel a part of something, and that's why for me, and I don't know who originally said it, but I first heard it through Wayne Dyer when he said, prayer is talking to God and meditation is listening. And so by having an active meditation practice for me, I have been able to, train my mind, get it to still when I need it to still. And, not just that, but to feel like to bring that in throughout my day. So that connection, that knowing that I can't really put it into words, as soon as, it's kind of the wisdom of the Tao. As soon as we put a word on it or a label on it, like it ceases to be that which it is. Like you can't contain it. Like you were saying, you can't contain it. You can't box it. You can't label it. It's in all things. And so finding this commonality is really been pivotal for me in my day-to-day journey, my parenting journey, allowing my children, there's I don't know what the name of the chapter is. I should know the name of the chapter in my book, but I call my children my tiny shamans. And they're always, they're guiding me and teaching me just as much, if not more so, than them. It's like when you were 6, you were having this insight. Like I feel that children have a closeness to this spirit that we're talking about, to this energy that we're talking about, because they don't have years and years and years of baggage to kind of get to the back of the storage unit. Absolutely. Right? Like they're already in the back. They're like, what are y'all talking about?
They were connected a lot closer than we are. We kind of move, we're connected and we kind of get away from being connected and then closer to connection. Although with the right work, like meditation, right, or the right reading the right materials, you can get connected again. Like I get in my I get into my child ego state a lot, and I get tuned in a lot. What's funny is the word contemplate, it's like a 13th century word. And the two definitions from back then, it was like, one of them was like the state of awareness of God's being. And then the other one was like a mystical state of like of discussing with God, something like that. And I'm like, man, we have really like totally diluted that word. Yeah. We think contemplate is like to compare things, but you're saying if I go in and I contemplate on something, I'm sitting with God. Whoa. Now that's a powerful idea. Yeah. If I could get quiet enough to spend time with God before going forth, right? Like that is a really neat idea. And I can't believe we don't, and there's actually a contemplative movement. Yeah. I'm really big in contemplative dialogue. Yes. And I've done quite a bit of contemplative dialogue. I used to run contemplative dialogues at Good Society. I don't know if you can see it on my.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I used to run these contemplative dialogues at Good Society. We discuss all kinds of things, sexuality, masculinity, things. I would love to do a contemplative dialogue with a bunch of dads on fatherhood. Yeah. Because it really helps us dig in and say, hey, what does this mean for us? What is it? What are we trying to bring forth? And who are we using to inspire and to model? And like, what are we willing to change today to be better tomorrow? Like, what are we willing to give up? And one of the things I really like that you are doing, this coaching for men and sobriety, this has been a big part of my personal path. I used to be very triggered. I like to say I have empathy for the angry man. I know what it feels like to be enraged, like literally, like I'm not controlling things anymore, punching a wall, screaming, doing all these bad things that were like awful. And I mean, I was like very toxic I was described as toxic, even in certain relationships. They're like, you're toxic. And it's like, I really struggled in relationships because I experienced so much jealousy. I had so much anger in me. I was triggered all the time. And part of it, what helped me is doing a lot of therapy, I actually did EMDR on some childhood stuff related to my mother, which is really, really important.
Yeah.
And, there's a great thing inside of this kind of work that I think all men and all people should learn how to do. That my therapist taught me that was so insanely valuable for me. And I can't help but go here without, or have to explain if I'm going here, because this is so powerful. But essentially, you have traumas in your life that we've all experienced, and you've experienced, and you keep a record of them. It's not that it's kind of like they're always just sitting there on a record with like a little spoke sticking up. And like, as the moment something triggers it, the record pops up. Right. So you have these records and you don't necessarily notice when that part of you has shown up unless you get really good at tuning in to these old traumas and you've actually done enough work. But most of us are too busy. Most of us have work and life is just moving and everything is going through the motions, and we don't even notice. We don't notice when we slip into our old selves. We don't notice when our child gets triggered, our inner child. We don't notice sometimes. But you do enough of this work, you do notice. You're like, oh, that's that part of me that was traumatized. But the idea was that you could go into these old files proactively, like ahead of whenever it triggers you. You could go in there and you could look at what happened. You could play it from front to end and try your best to not become the character, instead be the witness of your character experiencing it. So you keep presence. And the reason the presence is important is because you're keeping your prefrontal cortex open. If you become your character, if you become the inner child that was traumatized, your brain shuts down that faculty and you're re-traumatized, and it can happen really easily. So you have to notice whether you're being present or whether you're slipping into those emotions. Most of the time, whenever you're going back into the trauma and you slip into the child, your heart rate intensifies. You can feel heat. I can feel heat on my neck. I start to well up, those kind of things. Well, now I'm not super present. I'm actually more being the child in the trauma.
Yeah.
So you try to practice presence, holding that presence for yourself. And what's happening while you're doing that is you're actually opening up a gate. There are neurons firing between your prefrontal cortex and the cerebellum where you have this memory. And there's being this, and I could be wrong about the brain stuff, but it's what I know is I've got a rough model here, that there's energy and connection happening between the two of those. And then while you're present for yourself in that moment, you're imagining that you are an angel for yourself, that you are not necessarily a savior, but you are a warm, loving presence that is in the room for your child self. You can't stop the things from happening per se, because they already happened. But what you can do is you can lovingly, empathetically, heart open, be there for the you while you're going through that.
Yeah.
And the outside and the back end of this is that you have now sealed this connection between you actually can introduce yourself to your inner child too. And and my therapist would encourage me to build a relationship with that part and bring it to positive moments when I was experiencing positive. You wouldn't want to bring it if you were like just getting into a fight and the kitchen's all dirty and you're like, life feels like a mess. You wouldn't want to pop that little child up and be like, look at what we've done. Right? You wouldn't want to do that. But if you were, for example, I took mine to ACL, took my inner child to ACL. It was awesome. And he was like, dude, this is so cool. And I one time I was driving my BMW and I had this M3. Loved it. It was like one of the first days I got it. And I was having this blissful experience and I totally popped up my inner child to be like, check it out. We got an M3, so that I could reinforce the idea that, hey, even though we had a rough story, it all turned out okay.
Yeah.
And that part of me can be healed through learning like, hey, in the future, you're safe. In the future, you have you've got some solid pieces here. And that was huge for me. It was huge. It was transformational in so many ways, to the point where I started to let go of jealousy, started to feel more whole, started to feel more complete. Then I stopped drinking. I put drinking down, put down marijuana, which I thought was making me chill and cool. And really it was making me triggered. I was getting triggered all the time because the backside of marijuana was some kind of marijuana hangover. It was weird. I didn't even know that was impacting me, but I tried to just quit drinking, did that for a while. And then when I finally put down marijuana, I was way less triggered. And then I would do it on occasion, but I wouldn't do it like I was doing it, which was pretty heavy. But this stuff has made a huge impact for me. So tell me about some of that sobriety coaching and like what shows up for you in all of this. As a CEO there, you're hearing this. I'm sure this has been a big part of your work and what's showing up for you.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I think that so many of us, men in particular, were taught just to push through and do the thing and just get over it and, quit your bitching. Don't be a pansy. Don't be,
suck
feelings.
It up.
Yeah. Suck it up. This, don't never let them see you cry. Never let them see you sweat, kind of a thing. Right. So, this notion that our emotions are a guide, as Abraham Hicks calls them, emotional guidance system. I know when I am disconnected from my source, when I based on how I feel. So, my feelings are an opportunity for me to check in. And if I'm not checking in with my feelings, they're just going to get pushed
till they go out sideways,
explode, and
Absolutely.
they're gonna come out in all these toxic ways. And so it's really about honoring whatever is there for us to honor. And I just love, I never would have like I said, I thought that the world was a cruel place. I did not have this strong desire to procreate. I went along with the program of, okay, you get married, you have kids, you have 2.5 kids in the house and all the things. I went along with it, but it wasn't like, oh man, I just want to be I felt the world was cruel. I was suffering. I did not like the world. I did not like my life. And so, I kind of got bossed into breeding. But now that I have them, it's just so amazing. I just every day I'm just so in love. And so the opportunities that my kids give to me to be that authentic self and to say, is this in alignment? Is this am I going to have what if I'm talking about overeating, if I'm talking about over drinking or drinking at all, there's different levels of toxicity to the self. When we talk about the levels of self-destruction versus the things that we can do to build ourselves up. And this notion of I have got, if I want, the best thing I can do for my kids is to fill my cup, make sure that my cup is full so that I'm actually giving them, I'm offering them, the best of me and giving them the best of me. And, they do it effortlessly. Now that my son is 16, it's a little, the teenage years, it's not as sweet, innocent and angelic and all of the things as previously. But I wanted to tell you this one story. It's in my book when I'm talking about life and death, and how do we reconcile these things? How do we reconcile our existence and how do we communicate that to our children? I came from, an upbringing that said, my mom was told me about heaven and hell, probably when I was 8, but the night of my eight turning 9, where I was just absolutely terrified. Oh my God, I don't want to go there. And I mean, okay, fine. What do I need to do? Okay, good. And then, but I kind of stayed in that space of fear for many, 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 many years. So that when my son was 8, his uncle passed away. And so he was upset and, Of course, as parents, we want to comfort. We want to say, you'll see your uncle again. He's in heaven. You'll be right. Like, and for some people who believe that, that's great, but for me, and I also want to preface, like, any of the things that I say about Christianity or religion or any of those things is not meant to be derogatory in any way, shape, or form. If someone believes whatever it is they believe and they feel better in the belief of it, and they're making themselves better and they're making the world a better place, go for it. I know plenty of beautiful, amazing, lovely Christians. I know lovely, beautiful, amazing, Muslims, atheists. Like, I feel like humans are amazing. And so, to each their own, whatever they want to believe is whatever they want to believe. So, when my son was processing this sadness around his uncle's death, the Christian part of me wanted to be like, oh, you'll see him again. But then, there was this part where it's like, the best gift that I could give my kids is the opportunity for them to think for themselves, to trust themselves, to get into that space of contemplation, to not bark that this is the way life is, it's my way or the highway. I got, as I got into more this new thought and, these paradigms and constructs of things that were not necessarily traditional in their modalities, I found my evangelical propensity to make myself right and everyone else wrong. I felt that coming up even in like, oh, well, I've seen the light. Now the light, y'all need to get with the program. And, that's not the case. We really need to respect other people's journey, respect other people's beliefs, and give them the space to process whatever it is that they want to process. So this is the one. I know I've been going on, but I have.
Oh, you're good.
I have a point.
No, you're good. I totally get it. That was important.
Yeah, because it occurred to me that I didn't want it to be like I have no agenda. My love is my agenda, right? Like, how can I love myself? How can I love others? How can I love my kids? And, really give them the space. Like, I had to be prepared as this, refined, reformed ex-Southern Baptist, former, I tell people, I'm like, oh, I'm a Southern Baptist in recovery or recovered Southern Baptist or whatever.
Right.
I had to give him the space. Like, what if he wants to choose that belief system? Like, I have to give him the space to choose that, because if I'm like, no, my reformed way is the way, then I'm not really any different by saying this is the way, like, and so really giving them the space to believe whatever they want to believe. So, I was just open and vulnerable with my son when he was crying and he was upset about this. I think he was around 8. When I said, look, I would love to sit here and tell you, I know for a fact where your uncle is. I know for a fact where all of us are. I know for a fact that, and the truth is, for me personally, I don't. So all I can be responsible for is for speaking my truth, even if that truth is right now, I don't know. Some people believe the Christian story. And I told him the Christian story. I said, some people believe in reincarnation. Some people believe that there's nothing, that you just die and then you're done. And so it kind of went through some of these various theories, which in and of themselves wouldn't necessarily comfort my child, or I didn't think that I was comforting my child with all this. Like, I don't, pardon my language, but I don't fucking know. Right. Yeah. Like, and that was the truth. I'm like, I would love to say something to make you feel better, but guess what? Life is about sitting with the shit when you don't feel good and navigating and figuring that out. So
absolutely. 100%.
I really love that I gave my son the space to be upset. The space to, not know, the space for him to go into his own personal inquiry. And, he kind of just sat with it for a minute and he goes, you know what, Dad? I think, what I think it is? I think that the earth is like a big recycling system. And, it could not possibly, like, humans could not possibly live forever, because eventually the planet would not be able to support all of them. Like we'd run out of food or water or whatever. So, it's like the humans, like the bodies need to go back to the earth just to make room for the new ones. And so to make sure that everybody has enough food and water. So I was like, wow, that was really insightful for an 8-year-old. And then he said, he's like, it's like Earth is like a video game. Cause my son's he's always been, he loved his Nintendo and now it's PS5. He's always been into his games. So he's like, or the Earth is like a big computer game. And it's not that the old code is bad. It's just that the old code needs to go so that the new code can work. And I was just like, what the fuck did my son just say? Like, I was like bowing down to like, so when I say that they're my tiny shamans, I totally believe that. And like, but also patting myself on the back for not wanting to like control his experience or not make his upset wrong, not say, why are you crying? Don't cry, just to really let him be upset, let him process the things that he needs to process. And he's going to reconcile it. And he's going to pick a truth that actually works for him. And so it was a beautiful, this is a story I told in my book, and I bring it up every now and he's like, I don't even remember that. So, he doesn't remember a lot of the things, but
it's really beautiful that you allowed him to come to that place. And then he found sounds like even a bit of his own comfort in that place. Yeah. We do an exercise in one of the courses that I'm currently teaching, and it's really valuable in that we look at these challenges on one side, and this comes from positive discipline from Jade Nelson. But you outline the challenges that you face as a parent from like things like backtalk, disobedience, being irresponsible, not having empathy for others, all these challenges that we face as parents with our kids. And then on the other side, you look at life skills and characteristics. And when you look at life skills and characteristics, you look at things like we want them to be responsible. We want them to communicate. We want them to have empathy. We want them to be self-reliant. We want them to do X, Y, and Z, right? And what was interesting is I asked the other day, I said, when we're looking at this list of becoming more responsible, for example, or, getting through dissatisfaction or boredom or all these things that we are challenged with, was it pleasant and fun for you to develop the life skills on the right-hand side of the column?
Right.
Like, is it actually fun to become responsible, right? Or to become self-reliant? Is it actually, do you remember being a pleasant experience when you finally started to pick up your own things or realize that organization was important to you? And everybody's like, you can't say that it was super fun, right? So all these positives, all these very positive notions, for example, comfort, self-comfort, or being able to come to your own conclusion, all these positive skills that we develop are generally developed through hard moments. Mm-hmm. But we have a culture right now where everybody is trying to preserve their children from hard moments.
Yeah. They're
trying to tell them the story that's going to make them feel good. They're trying to comfort them at every turn. They're trying to prevent
on the road does not benefit anybody.
Right. Like we're trying to like prevent them from ever feeling dissatisfaction, from ever feeling, a sense of upset. And you took a different approach. And through that approach, you actually helped him develop skills on the other side of the things. You helped him look in and say, hey, what do I believe? And well, what could be the truth? And, we can look at this with Dad. I can communicate. I can use some critical thinking. I can develop these skills even in this hard moment, not by somebody coming and saving me and telling me what I need to think, but by somebody inviting me to think for myself while acknowledging that this is a very complicated thing for all of us, including us adults.
Yeah.
We don't have perfect answers. And there are times where there's not a perfect answer. Mm-hmm. And children learn these really valuable lessons when we let them. But I see this happening more and more. And what I think is we got to combat it, that there's a society it's the instant gratification. It's the fast food culture. It's the, it's the snacking culture. Like we don't let our children go hungry, man. Like every time a child even whimpers for a moment, we stuff chips at them or crackers or take the goldfish or whatever, like just trying to keep them satiated. But it's actually in those moments when we're not satiated, when we're discomfort, we're dissatisfied, that we actually develop really important skills that we will need for the rest of our life. And I love your approach. I really just want to like kudos, dude. Way to go on reflecting with him and allowing him to experience what it feels like to juggle the meaning of death, which is very, very, very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, and it's still something that, it's like, how do you, it's like there's an air of almost irreverence. And I don't mean like, when I croak or who croaks or, it's like, when my body stops, I use that. I don't necessarily use the word die as much as, your body stops, because it is my belief that we're all this energy and we're either animated as a human or we're animated as, my dog or whatever.
I could tell you several animals I would actually enjoy being for sure. Right. Like it's okay.
I'd like to be my cat. She's just whatever. No responsibilities. I'm
a big fan of this oneness perspective as well. And after studying a lot of different cultures and a lot of different religions, and also listening and reading people like David Bohm, who was basically was a protege with Einstein and used to speak with Einstein about the theory of relativity, but also they got into this new place where Einstein has several quotes where he started to get to this place of what they called wholeness and implicate order. And what Einstein realized, and obviously was a very bright man and ended up bringing out a lot of wisdom in his own pursuit of science, scientific pursuits, but he got into a place that was very close to a lot of the spiritual teachings. Where Einstein and David Bohm arrived was that he called wholeness and implicate order. And they realized by contemplating deeply on the earth and how we exist in it, that there is nothing, literally no thing that can be separate from another. That the water on this earth belongs to the earth. When we drink it, we're not taking it from the earth, right? And that we belong to the earth, that the earth belongs to the universe, literally universe, right? It's that it's one thing like that. Yeah. Our planet seems like it's disconnected from the moon, but is it, right? And if that's connected, then aren't we all connected to everything that goes out as far as we can perceive? And we've already seen how far that goes. Yeah. And we're not separate. We're not separate from any of that, even though we experience separateness. We truly are interdependent and mostly dependent. We kind of ebb and flow out of interdependence, but we're mostly dependent on the rest of this thing. And if you look at that, then from a more meta perspective, right, that also means, and this is hard for Christians, hard for a lot of the religious type to get their head around sometimes, that energy of Satan and God are actually almost two sides of the same coin, which means they are connected, and that there is a necessary response, right? It's almost like the electrons. We have like the positive and negative. It's like there is this necessary response to evil, for example, in a positive way. But I sometimes wonder, does our good pursuits create evil? Like, is this so? Yeah. Is it like they are in response to one another? And then I go, well, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should just pursue the middle path. Yeah, exactly. Maybe we shouldn't try to be so righteous.
Don't be so good.
Yeah, don't be so good out there, man. You guys are creating a bunch of evil people. The more good, it's kind of a funny, thing. But one time I asked a person, I said, do you believe that the world is like, are we being pulled into evil or like what exactly is happening? And they were like, no, honestly, I think the pursuit of good is like good for, it's actually good for us. Like it's good for our bodies. It's good for our families. It's good for, we're being pulled towards good. And there are some people that are somewhat inverted on themselves. And it's almost like our energy is in response to their inversion, which is a really interesting idea too, which is just that we're all kind of connected in some way energetically as well. And we share almost like one mind. We share, even if you look at it as this is all connected, we share one body, even though we're experiencing it separately.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of spiritual truths, and speaking to that, like scientifically, when we really break down atoms and molecules and, understanding the distinction of the rate at which they move, and what distinguishes a solid from a gas is just the speed of the molecules. Right. So, and Alan Watts talks about this a little bit with, like, it's kind of like the fan, it's going super fast. It appears solid, but really it's moving fast. So these illusions that there is any separation, or what I feel like opportunities to create a beautiful, amazing, wonderful stage. I believe at the core, like stage, like production, like we're in the ultimate virtual reality right now with like all of our senses. And I mean, we're like in it, and it's like you said with the inner child thing, when we identify that we're in it and we start feeling like we're in it, then we are attached. Like I don't want to use the word screwed, but like we're in it. Like we're in the movie. It's like when you watch a movie, you forget you're watching a movie because you're just so invested and so involved. It's like that with our past, with the present, whenever you're in those memories and you're attached to it, as opposed to, oh, I'm the consciousness of the observing. I'm observing thoughts, and I'm observing this life, and I'm kind of manipulating, the feelings and the notions and all these things as I meander around, and really, really ask myself, what is the most loving choice that I can make here? What is the in my highest good, as well as the highest good of all those around me? And, I believe at the core is love. And, to provide this stage, this platform, this free will system that creates the opportunity for, pardon my language, but for shit to hit the fan. So, when we forget who we are, and we forget that, what we're capable of, and how we're capable of loving one another, loving our enemies, forgiving, dropping judgment, all these beautiful, amazing, wonderful things are opportunities when we experience people who forget that they're that. So they're the ones who quote unquote, hurt us. But they also provide this opportunity for what I feel is for love to expand. I believe that, there could have been a time when we like love was all there was. And I was like, what, thinking like, what could be a situation where love would expand? Like, oh, let's just throw a bunch of consciousness in this little thing and see what happens, but that's like you said, like love really, really can expand in the presence of evil. And I believe that, we certainly will never, I feel, live in a conflict-free world. We'll always have differences of perspective. We'll always have, disagreements. But I do believe that it exists like world peace in so much as like, we're not going to murder one another. We're not going to physically harm one another. I believe these things are really possible the more we get into that mindset of connectedness and oneness. Like when I hurt you, I'm hurting myself. When I judge you, I'm judging myself. So really, really, I mean, and it takes honest inventory. You've got to take honest, inventory around like how are you treating yourself, how you're treating others, what addictions, what toxins. I mean, I go through this a lot with my clients. I've got a little mindset reset, 28 days to shine kind of a thing where we do a lot of the inner work and the inner child work and, meditation and contemplation and all these things. It's just a practice, it's like getting in the gym and staying healthy. You got to do that for your spirit as well as your mind. Like it's a whole thing,
David Bohm has a book called Thought as a System, and he discusses incoherence. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I love that you were saying it's like a mindset reset or like a mind reset, and where you're contemplating, you're doing inner child, what you're doing and stuff. But he talks about how essentially like the problems that we see are symptoms of our thinking.
Right. Exactly.
And it's so difficult to get away from your own thinking that creates the problem. Like all the frameworks that you have to reference, good, bad, good, evil, like, what it means to be gay, what it means to be, a good man, what it means to be this, all these notions and these preconceived constructs that you have, they are just that. They were preconceived. They actually came to you as packages that you got downloaded. So when your son said old code is preventing new code from working,
always.
When I remember when you go through like when you try to go through the spiritual path, you face a lot of the old constructs. You face the guilt, you face the church, you face all of these things. And sometimes they are either barriers to entry for a new way of saying things, or they're also like they're literally the opportunity to see something different. Like one of the meditations I did that opened me up was I meditated on God, which is a very powerful thing to meditate on. And I meditated on God for a really long time. And then I got to this question. I felt tuned in. I felt like I could ask God. Sometimes I get to this place where I'm like, I can feel so much presence. And I asked the question and it just came out of me, what is beyond God? And I said it with like a really like an intentional, like, I really want to know what's beyond this God, Instantly there was two things that happened. The first thing that happened is I actually saw, like, in my mind, like, it was a really weird thing, but have you ever won solitaire and you see the card shooting out? I saw like it was like, it looked like that, but they were piggy banks and they were shooting out. They were just these images of piggy banks shooting out. And then out of the piggy bank tops were coins popping out. And it was like, and what I got was, you hit the jackpot. You hit the jackpot. It was like, and it like shot these piggy banks everywhere with the little coins shooting out. And I was like, whoa, like I just asked crazy question. What is beyond God? Just a simple, 4-word question or whatever it is. And I said, there was immediately after the piggy bank imagery, immediately after I felt guilty. Felt so guilty for asking that question. It was like, how could you challenge the one and only? How could you ever ask what is beyond? There is nothing beyond. I felt so much shame and guilt. And so then I had to I was like, okay, hold on a second. Which is it? Did I do something wrong, or did I hit the jackpot? Like, I don't feel like there's something wrong here in this. And this is exactly what David Bohm calls incoherence. I have incoherence. These two thoughts cannot be together. So I have to reconcile them. So of course I go back to God. I say, God, help me out here. I feel guilty. I feel like I have wronged you for asking this question. God comes back and says, why? I said, because I'm asking if there's something beyond you. I'm asking if there's like another God that we don't know of. I'm asking if there's more than we know. I'm asking if, is there some other source of energy that's beyond you? And God said, that's perfect. And I was like, okay, why is that perfect? Why would it be good for me to ask that question? He said, because you understand me in a box. And your boundaries are not true. And what you know of as God there's so much more to dig in. There's so much more beyond.
Never fathom at all.
It's never, you could pursue me throughout your lifetime and there's still more to know. The idea that we figured it out centuries ago and that's it. No more touching it. It's off the table. That is what it is. Close up the book. Our work here is done. Yeah. The idea that the work here is done is too naive.
Oh, yeah.
You have to continue to pursue me. And it was actually in that meditation where I said, okay, I'm going to keep looking for God. I'm going to look for God in all of these different places. I'm going to see what is God beyond what we think of as God? What is God? And I learned, I started to reading a lot of people and learning things like I am that. And like, looking at and saying, okay, well, hold on a second. Here's a person. This is a homeless person. They look lazy, drug addicted, like they look psychotic. I am that. There's something in there. And then I'm like, oh, well, if I could identify with that, because most of me wants to reject it and say that's the underbelly of society. But if I can identify with it, I go, ooh, a part of me is sick. A part of me needs help. A part of me needs my heart. A part of me needs my mind. A part of me needs my energy. That part of me. That part of me is me being experienced, and it's living a living hell because I am neglecting to acknowledge that I am that. And it's a really powerful place to come from. And it also let me go of my judgment. I don't judge my neighbor.
Yeah.
I don't judge people because I don't have any damn ground to judge. Let the person who's perfect get up and judge, because I've never met them. I've never met a perfect person in my life.
Yeah.
Every one of us have baggage. Every one of us have trauma. Every one of us have struggles. There's not a perfect person. So let go of the judgment and move on to like, hey, how can I love you more deeply? How can I understand you more empathetically? How can I be with you more? Doesn't mean you have to accept it doesn't mean you have to become their thoughts and belief systems, but you do have to create space for saying, hey, like, you're a human being, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that, and speaking to co-parenting, I know a lot of guys, parents are you share the custody, myself included. So it's a 50-50 split. And there is a lot of evidence that I could use to make the co-parenting experience a lot more toxic than I'm making it now. And I would be justified, and I could have a rally of people behind me on quote unquote, my side, and I actually did that for many years. And, it's very easy to do this world of judgment, in the world of resentment. As Wayne Dyer says, there are no justified resentments. It's like, it's drinking the poison and expecting the other person to get sick, and really, really being willing to, it's kind of like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Right. And so it's like putting down the gauntlet, for lack of better words, of, heads are going to roll. It's like, yes, I mean, just getting out of that whole paradigm and that whole construct. You mentioned, the identifying with someone else who we don't feel, like we identify with. And, to me, it's all programming, so the person running the program, and I experienced this when I had my own stint with homelessness, that it was a product of programming. It was a product of financial programming, and that's it. Not having an adequate, a structure, an example of this is how you manage finances. And this is really how you manage life, and really like when you get off the rails, here's what you need to do. It's a holistic, it's no, here, go take a vitamin C shot. It's really, it's a whole, when you talk about like holiness, right? Like it's as a whole, there's no separation. So bringing ourselves back into that space of right-mindedness and treating our body as a temple, and, giving ourselves access to our own authenticity, and, really treating ourselves with respect. And then we can turn around and show that that is the way that the world will be a better place for our children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like how you are embodying facilitating that, as opposed to being like, I'm right. With your son, for example, you facilitated his inquiry. And you said, for example, if I were to say my way is the way, well, now I'm just as guilty as I was as those who I have said, hey, that wasn't right for me.
You're drawing a line in the sand, and like, what's the point?
And so one of my mentors used to say transformation by nature is disruptive.
Yeah, for sure.
And disruptive can also be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And so when we're asking a person or people or mankind to go through a transformation, to go through an enlightenment, if you wanted to, they are not going to be comfortable. We are not going to be comfortable through our transformations. It's actually going to be uncomfortable, but just like the child experiencing a slight bit of discomfort, but on the other side, gaining in powerful life skills and characteristics, so too can the discomfort of us going through our own transformations produce something really beautiful on the other side, a new skill set, a new way of seeing things. It's like climbing Mount Everest isn't going to be so fun, but the view is great. Right. Mm-hmm. Like that, you're going to be challenged on the climb, that no one is going to deny that. And you're going to have a lot better perspective. And so like, when I was doing habit coaching, I was trying to teach people to not let the automatic switch come back on. My program is called Switch, and it's actually a habit coaching program, but there's so many different analogies. But the switch analogy is like, we have an automatic thermostat inside of ourselves that whenever we get uncomfortable, it kicks us back on into comfort. Mm-hmm. And transformation is uncomfortable. So if you are going to, for example, put down a substance, right? The buzzing on discomfort you're feeling in your body wants to click you back into comfort with its automatic switch. You need to hold down the manual switch while also looking for something to find, like maybe a new thing that feels good, drinking a glass of water, pushing out, 20 push-ups, taking a walk, doing something while holding that switch, manually holding it, and then doing something that will distract you in a healthy way long enough for that to subside. And you got to keep doing that, repeating that process to the point where you wake up in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you're like, man, it's actually a lot easier. This is actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. That's not to say you won't come into certain environments and certain times. For example, New Year's or certain things where everything collides together. We've had so much programming in the past of, we pop bottles on New Year's, and we've had so much programming in the past. It's a party, everybody has to do drinking or drugging, like to have fun. Like that, all of that is not necessarily true, but we've had a program running for a long time that makes us think it is so. And we have to battle with that. So, man, dude, so much work to do here, but also
just scratching the surface.
So much opportunity within all of this as well. I want to ask you a question. If you could give a dad out there, like, An idea of, let me form this question in a really powerful way. If you could give a dad a really powerful message that has been kind of the seed of what's sprouted up for you, that's helped you, for example, shed the weight that you've shed, that's helped you, live a more authentic, beautiful life, what would that message be? What would you tell a dad out there who's maybe just trying to keep up with the Joneses, is going through the motions, thinks they're satisfying all the boxes, thinks they're being the person they need to be, but inside they're just scurrying and they're not feeling connected to themselves, to their partner, to their world, et cetera. What would be your message to them?
Well, it's not too fancy, but what's coming up for me is you are beautiful just the way you are. This notion of beauty is not something that men can, it's the women who are beautiful. We don't often look at ourselves as beautiful or use that adjective. Because we feel like our worth is determined by what we do. And when I say beauty, I'm not even talking about physical beauty. I'm talking about the expression of who we are, our existence, just like my son came out as a baby, like he was gorgeous, babies are gorgeous. I don't care what gender. Just beautiful. And there's nothing that anyone can do to take away that truth, other than our own forgetfulness. So when we can parent from that space of knowing our inherent beauty as a part of nature and as a part of creation, the short tree doesn't look to the tall tree and say, why am I not tall? The short tree just is. And it's all part of the beautiful forest that we can observe and we can enjoy and we can experience. And I feel that, there is a big opportunity for men to embrace their self-expression, just the way that they are. And they don't have to adhere to any other standard other than their own in that regard.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
It's, Case, it's funny. I've done a lot of men's work. I went to Mankind Project, did Landmark Forum.
Okay.
Did a lot. I've done a lot.
Did you get it?
Yeah. Do you get it? I'm always getting it.
Yeah.
Already always listening.
Yeah.
Which is, that really does help with the understanding, the thought perspective and how thought is a system. Landmark can be a very powerful tool for that
for sure.
very thing. But one of the things that shows up in men's work is vulnerability and authenticity. We've been programmed for a long time that women, children, grandparents, elders, dogs, basically everything other than you as a man is important. And hold the door, step aside, save the animal, throw yourself at a burning building for a cat, preserve the children, and just never make room for yourself, And in all of that, we've also been simultaneously told, suck it up, quit being a pussy, get on with it, because for good reason, right? Life is challenging. It's tough. You actually do need thick skin. It is important to not be broken at every turn, because you're going to face challenges.
Yep.
It's not that some of those messages aren't true. It's just that they don't necessarily invite us to say, for example, hey, I'm struggling. Hey, there's something here that I am working on that I need a little help with. But anyways, where this is getting is we're told we're not supposed to be sad. We're not supposed to be angry. We're not supposed to be scared. We're not supposed to be all these things. And sometimes just being able to be in a group like your group, Men Who Shine, be with coaches and consultants who say, look, here's the deal. If you can, for a moment, step into courage, because it's actually courage is what is required in order for you to be more authentic, in order for you to be more vulnerable, in order for you to say, hey, there's some things I'm working on here. If you can do that, you will see on the other side, you'll see the benefit, but it actually requires you stepping outside of your comfort zone, stepping into that courage. And so as men, like there's a calling for us right now as men to step up and say, hey, I haven't been as good as I can be, and I'm working on it. I struggle daily. It's okay, because me and my neighbor and every other person do too. Right. And I'm working on it. And I want to be me. I want to be honest. I really want to be honest about who I am. I really want to be honest about what I feel. And I'm tired of hiding it. And I just want to be me. And if you can be courageous enough to acknowledge your shortcomings, to step into that space, to love yourself enough and have enough courage to say, hey, this is who I really am. This is how I really feel. This is what is really going on inside of me. You'll see on the other side. And I have seen, for example, that men will embrace you. Women will adore you. Children will feel you. Like you're being real, like you were with your son. I don't know the answer. People will connect with you. You'll actually find on the other end, it's not rejection. It's actually quite the opposite. It's acceptance. It's love. It's honor. It is all these beautiful things when you can be more true to you. Yeah. And you can put aside those things that you're afraid to admit. This is the work here, because if you hide it and you continue to hide it year after year after year after year, it comes out sideways, and a small part of you is dying. You're basically suffocating a small part of you that wants to be alive. And we can do this by just acknowledging who we are, what we truly feel, what we really want, and being willing to share that with those we love and those we trust, and being open, courageous, and vulnerable. And this is really powerful stuff, man, really healing.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you for doing the work, and for, forwarding the conversation, and holding the space for, for me and for guys like me, and for, providing a safe place for us to, reevaluate our self-expression, and really question, what part of ourselves were we putting out there that was inauthentic, versus the part of us that's authentic that we want to express. So anything inauthentic, if you're tired or, that's a space of inauthenticity. You're doing something that's exhausting you, that's draining you. Like I'd say people, we have access to the energy that creates worlds. And what is required of us to access that energy, ironically, is nothing. Like getting out of our way, like literally doing nothing, quieting our mind, stilling our mind, following that intuition, following that, super consciousness that we don't have to have it all figured out. My mother said if faith required a blueprint, it wouldn't be called faith at all. So it's not about, faith in any particular like person, place, or thing. It's just the power of that belief to know that when I'm in this space, when I'm trusting, when I'm surrendering, I don't have to have it. I'm going to trust that the words are going to come out that need to be heard. I don't have to predetermine. I don't have to have it all figured out. I don't have to do any of that. That's not my job. My job is to get out of the way so that the divinity in me that's in you do, like we can express what's there for us to express, and then that can go out, and those people can go out, and then they can do it, then they can do it, then they can do it. It's what Landmark calls the tipping point of transformation. So it's really recreating what it means to be a human.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, other than that, it's no big deal.
Yeah. Nothing to see here.
Just keep moving along. Yeah. I love that. I mean, I love that work with, I coach people in their sobriety apart from the 12 steps, because my approach is very like holistic, and there's a nutritional component, there's sleep. I feel like if you're getting adequate sleep, if you're moving your body, you're getting proper nutrition, all these components play into your capacity to be able to sit with fear, really, because most everybody drinks because I need to relax, or it's fancy I'm anxious, or fancy word for they don't know how to deal with fear. So when we fully equip ourselves to deal with fear, then we're not going to automatically go to the toxin that we know deep down is not serving us. But it could be anything that we do that's in attempts to cope with that fear. But once we cope with that fear, then we really transcend our own experience of what it means, really what it means to be alive, and showing our children what they can do, which is really anything. So.
Yeah, man. Well, great stuff. I know we're kind of a little bit over on time, and I just want to say I appreciate you so much. There's so much, even more. I can still feel myself inside going, there's so much more I want to dig
volume
in.
2. We got to.
I was going to say, I'm going to have you back here and contemplate some more. I love what you shared today. I love how you embodied your parenting with your son, particularly around religion. You are a great example of somebody who's living this authenticity. And I hope to maybe even have a before and after shot of, I'd love to see your photo of that transformation, the weight loss, the experience. And I do think you being authentic, I can feel it in my bones. Like, you being authentic is paving the way for your children to say, hey, I can be loved. I can be me and I can be loved. I don't have to be somebody else. I don't have to try to seek external approval. I can internally validate myself and externally feel the love of others by being myself. Like, who I am is valuable. And I can see that message. I felt that message today from you, and I'm super appreciative, man. Thank you so much. I want to say a ho, thank you.
Yeah. Ho, that's me. Ho.
Well,
that could be for volume 2.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Case. I really appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. Same to you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you've received some value from it, please share it with other dads and consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll see you in the next episode. Looking for support with your fatherhood journey? Go to bedadly.com and take our Dadly Disposition quiz and learn helpful insights on how you can overcome power struggles with your kids.